At 3:12 in the morning, a security camera in an abandoned hospital corridor recorded something that has never been explained. The nurse on duty that night had already told police what she saw. She said the patient in room 7, the one lying on the bed in this footage, had died 3 hours earlier. But the camera kept rolling. And what it captured at 3:12 a.m. is the reason this video exists. Watch closely, because if you blink, you'll miss the exact moment everything changes. Now, before we get to what the camera caught, you need to understand where this footage came from. This is St. Mary's Mercy Hospital, and for 30 years, it was one of the busiest emergency rooms in the state. Every night, the corridors hummed with the sound of running footsteps, rolling gurneys, and the low murmur of nurses doing their rounds. It was a place of healing. But every hospital has a story it never wants to tell, and St. Mary's had one buried in its basement. In the early 1980s, the hospital's lower level was converted into a temporary morgue. During one particularly brutal winter, when a massive storm knocked out the power for 3 straight days, the morgue ran out of space. The cold storage units filled up within the first night, and because the backup generators were old and failing, the hospital staff had to make a decision no one wanted to make. They moved the deceased into the main corridor, right outside room 7. The staff quietly began calling that hallway the corridor of silence. Nobody wanted to walk it alone. Not the nurses, not the doctors, not even the security guards who were paid to walk every floor. There was something about that stretch of hallway that made people uncomfortable. Doors that creaked when there was no wind, lights that flickered in perfect rhythm, a cold spot that never warmed, even in the middle of summer. And always, always, the feeling of being watched. By the late 90s, the hospital shut its doors for good. The building sat empty for 25 years. The windows were boarded up, the sign out front rusted and fell, weeds swallowed the parking lot, but the people who lived nearby started reporting something strange almost immediately. Lights turning on in the windows at night, on the 3rd floor, the same floor as room 7, and not just flickering lights, but a soft, steady glow, like someone had left a lamp on and gone to bed. At first, the locals assumed it was teenagers sneaking in, but every time someone went to investigate, they found the doors locked and the windows sealed. Nothing disturbed, nobody inside. Still, the lights kept coming on, night after night, at the exact same time. And then, the reports changed because 3 separate people called the police, saying they saw a figure standing in the window of room 7. Just standing there, watching the street. Waiting, that's when the security company was hired. Not because the building was being torn down, not because it was being renovated, but because someone needed to find out what was in that room. So they installed cameras. Cameras in the corridors, cameras in the rooms, cameras that recorded 24 hours a day. And it was one of those cameras mounted in the corridor outside room 7 that caught what happened on that cold November night. Here's where the story gets stranger. The nurse from that night, we'll call her Margaret, agreed to speak about what happened, and she said something that made my blood run cold. She told investigators that the patient in room 7, an elderly man who had been in the hospital for weeks, had passed away at around midnight. The body was moved to the morgue. The room was cleaned. The door was locked. Standard procedure. Nothing unusual. Except, Margaret said she heard a noise coming from room 7 at 2:58 a.m. A sound she could only describe as breathing. Slow, rhythmic, deep, coming from inside a room that should have been completely empty. She said she stood in the hallway for a long moment, listening, and she said she knew with absolute certainty that whatever was making that sound was not a person. She didn't check the room. She couldn't. She'd been a nurse long enough to know when something was wrong, when something was waiting. And at 3:12 a.m., the security camera in that corridor picked up movement. The footage is grainy, it's dark, but what it shows has been argued about ever since. The camera shows a figure walking down the corridor toward room 7. It's wearing what looks like a hospital gown. It moves slowly. Deliberately, its footsteps make no sound, even though the floor is old linoleum that creaks with every step. The figure stops at the door of room 7. And then, for 3 full seconds, it stands there, completely still, as if it's listening, as if it's waiting for something. Then the door opens, by itself, and the figure steps inside. Hold on, let's rewind that. Look at the door handle. Watch it closely. The figure never touches it. It's standing a full 2 feet away. And yet, the handle turns, down, slowly, like someone on the other side is opening it for them. That's not a shadow. That's not a glitch in the camera. That's the handle physically turning, with nobody on the other side of that door. Now, the timestamp. This is the part that made even the investigators uncomfortable. The nurse's report says the door to room 7 was locked at 12:05 a.m. The key was in the office, 2 floors up. It never left that office all night. So I'm going to ask you the same question they asked each other. If the room was locked and the key was 2 floors away, then who or what opened that door? After that night, the security company sent a team in. They checked room 7 top to bottom. The room was exactly as the nurse had left it. Except for one thing. The bed was unmade. The sheets were pulled back, like someone had been lying in it. Now that alone was impossible. The room had been locked for 25 years. Nobody had slept in that bed since the hospital closed. The mattress was covered in a thick layer of dust, untouched for decades. So the investigators knew the sheets couldn't have been moved by any person. And yet, there it was. The sheets pulled back, the pillow dented, as if someone had climbed into that bed, laid their head down, and never gotten up. Here's where it gets even harder to explain. On the pillow, there was a single impression. A dent, deep and clear, like someone's head had been resting there recently. The dust around it was undisturbed. No footprints, no fingerprints, no trace of anyone having been in the room at all. Just that one dent in the pillow. Waiting, and then there's the footage from inside room 7. The camera mounted in the corner of the room recorded through the entire night. And at 3:12 a.m., the exact same minute as the corridor footage, the image on that camera flickered. Not a power surge, not a technical glitch. The investigators confirmed it. The camera briefly showed a second bed, right beside the empty one, with a figure sitting on it. It lasted for 3 seconds. Then, the image snapped back to normal, just the empty room, the locked door, the dust. But in those 3 seconds, the camera captured something that shouldn't have been there. A second bed that didn't exist in that room, and a figure sitting on it, perfectly still, facing the door, as if it had been waiting for the other figure to arrive. Now watch the 2 recordings side by side. The corridor camera shows the figure entering room 7 at 3:12 a.m. The room camera, at that exact same second, shows a second figure already sitting on the bed, meaning the figure entering the room was not alone. Someone, or something, was already waiting inside. Waiting for it, the investigators wrote in their final report, and I'm quoting them here, "No logical explanation could be determined for the events captured on the recording." That's the closest an official report gets to saying, "We don't know what this is." And it's a statement they were not comfortable making. Because there was more. The footage from the rest of that night was never released. It was sealed, but we know what happened. Because of the guard. At 2:00 a.m. the next morning, the security guard on duty quit. On the spot. He left his post, he left his keys, he walked out the front gate and never came back. He never explained why, he refused to talk about it. But the report notes something chilling. When they reviewed the footage from the hours after 3:12 a.m., the room was empty. The bed was made. The sheets were flat. The dent on the pillow was gone, as if the night had simply erased itself. So let me leave you with this. The hospital was locked for 25 years. The room was sealed. The key was 2 floors away. And yet, on that one night, a figure walked through a locked door into a room where a second figure was already waiting. The nurse heard breathing from an empty room. The camera caught a handle turning with no hand on it, and by morning, every trace of it had vanished. That's the footage they couldn't explain. That's the footage they tried to bury, and that's the reason we made this video. If you think that's the end of this story, it's not. We obtained access to the full 24 hours of footage from that night, and what was captured after 2 a.m. has never been shown on YouTube before. The figure didn't appear just once. It appeared 7 times. And the final time, it wasn't alone. It was standing in the middle of the corridor, facing the camera directly, as if it knew it was being watched. That's in part 2. So here's what I need you to do. Hit subscribe. Turn on notifications. Because the moment part 2 goes live, you do not want to miss what the camera caught at 2:47 a.m. Because this time, the figure wasn't just walking the hallway. This time, it was walking toward the camera. And it didn't stop. I'll see you there.